Now, speaking of official, we haven't heard the official word on the expectations around when Jeff Okudah will return, but we do still have some good news to share with you about Jeff Okudah and what that means, not just to him, but to the DB room overall. So, of course, we know that word came out, rampant word, because it looked so bad in the beginning when Jeff Okudah went down. He's holding his ankle. He's carted off of the practice field. And you think in the worst, like, oh my goodness, just as this guy is starting to show shades and glimpses of who he could be, yet another injury to a guy who's been hampered by them his first couple of years in the league, only to get a good word from Arthur Smith on Saturday. Now, while he did not state exactly the timeline, he did say the good news is that they expect him back very early in the regular season. So that certainly says that the MRI results must have shown that it was serious enough to keep him out for the preseason and maybe a couple games, but not serious enough to lose him for the season. How important is it to that DB room and to what Ryan Nielsen is trying to do overall, along with Jerry Gray? How important is it for those guys to know that they have not lost Jeff Okudah for this entire season?
It's super important because here's the thing. Like, because I'm the type of guy that once you learn someone's story, like I start to root for the guy because, like you said, like you mentioned, that you just laid it out, the injuries and all that stuff, and what a lot of people don't talk about, like having an incompetent coach as in Matt Patricia, and him trying to imitate Bill Belichick in every form and facet, and knowing that he can't do that because he wasn't the guy that was the catalyst for all those Super Bowls that they won in New England. So when you have a guy having to deal with all that crap and having to deal with all the bus talk, having to deal with media up there in Detroit that he wasn't necessarily favorable to because they turned on him as well. So not really trusting anybody. So for him to be traded for by the Falcons for a 5th-round draft pick, and knowing that his 5th-year option wasn't going to get picked up, he had something to prove. He had a chip on his shoulder, obviously. So for him to come in here to be set up to do well, to play opposite of a guy that was his draft mate in AJ Terrell. Then you talking about the DB whisperer and Jerry Gray, who's there, who said, hey, I can't wait to get my hands on this guy. Then you got Ryan Nielsen, the new defensive coordinator, who's coming in here, who's aggressive, super energetic. Everybody's kind of getting on board with what he's bringing to the table each and every day. So all of those factors kind of come in and say, okay, this dude is set up for success. And for him to kind of get that injury, you're like, man, you start to feel bad for him. But however, I feel like this is huge because you're talking about having probably one of the best secondaries in potentially in the league, T.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I've already said that AJ Terrell looks like he's getting back to where he needs to be. All you got to do is stay healthy, knock on wood or whatever. I ain't got no wood around me, but I'm knocking on faux wood right now. And then you're talking about Jesse Bates, who was an All-Pro, who has been an All-Pro in this league, and he's getting paid All-Pro type money, and he's looking to prove himself and justify that contract. Then you got a guy like Richie Grant, who we'll talk about in a while and in a little bit, who is continuing to progress as well. So when you have all these factors, T, for Arthur Smith to say, you know what, he doesn't have to give out an injury report, because it's not during the season. So for him to say, you know what, this guy's going to be back very early in the season, that to me, that within the first 6 games, that's kind of where I'm putting the marker. So I think that is absolutely huge for the Atlanta Falcons as a defense and what they're trying to do because, hey, we know they want to be aggressive and they want to send pressure. So you got to have guys who can back there who can actually cover.
Yeah, and I would say as well, you want someone who can complement AJ Terrell because the thought of having just
they've been searching for a long time, T.
it would just be like it would just take the air or the wind out of the room because of how you saw so much potential in him and so much brilliance, and then you're looking on the other side and it was like bereft of talent. No offense to anybody, but let's just be honest. So that was also positive news, I think, for that DB room overall, as you mentioned, but I think more importantly for AJ Terrell, just so that he could show, not just get back to who he was, but actually show you even better, which I think he can do once Jeff Okudah comes back. And the good news is this DB room is also deep enough to be able to, and when I say patchwork, I do not mean that to offend the Falcons, but saying that there's enough talent in the DB room for them to be able to handle the couple of games that Jeff Okudah will be out at the beginning of the year. And part of the reason is because you have the likes of Richie Grant, who continues to come into his own. And one of the things I liked about what Arthur Smith said about him is that he is basically he's impressive. Like he's really liking what he's seeing out of Richie Grant. He's making an impact. Those are big words and big compliments from Arthur Smith. He doesn't give them out unless he actually means it. So I
No
thought
doubt.
about that, and yeah, and
Facts.
Right. And then Richie Grant was talking to our guys, Andy and Randy, on Friday and just talking about how excited he is. He feels like he's literally got nowhere to go but up. And he feels like he is primed and ready to show what I thought was an interesting comment, how proud he is to have been a part of the first class for Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot. So I said, yeah, this is what you want to hear out of your third year guy who's now a bit of a veteran in the DB room. Man, there is some talk and some excitement around Richie Grant. And I think that he is definitely ready to deliver.
Yeah, I'm with you because here's the thing. Like we got a little peek into this last year, or early on in the season when he had the interception versus the Seahawks to close down the game. Those are the plays that matter, right? Because we talked about it. The Falcons defense don't turn teams over enough. They don't give the offense easy opportunities, or short fields to work with enough. And that's the thing that we said that they need to improve on. That's why they went out and got a guy like Jesse Bates. So when you think about it from that standpoint, it's like, okay, like we've seen flashes from this guy. Like we saw him being able to adjust, not necessarily, the best nickel corner, but hey, I can do it, coach. I got you.
Yeah.
I fill in. I do what I need to do. So that was in his rookie year. So in his second year, you say, hey, he was out there on the field for most of the plays on snaps on defense last year. So when you have that coming into play, then he out there making plays as well, not just being out there. He was out there making plays. So I think there's one thing that. And another thing that I feel like that's really huge is the fact that I got a chance to talk to Jesse Bates last week. And I asked him about Richie, and all he did was just start smiling. He's like, yeah, Richie is a different type of dude, in a good way. So because you start to feel like those guys are getting that type of synergy that they need to be able to fluctuate between free and strong. Sometimes they may move Jesse around because you never know what Ryan is going to be able to throw. Mm-hmm. And you already know Richie can fluctuate between that free and that strong safety. So and he's got a little nickel experience too as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of possibilities. And even throw Jalen Hawkins into there, into that equation as well. So there are a lot of things that needs to happen in order for Ryan Nielsen to start getting these guys to work together. And I think they're starting to do that as the training camp progresses on.
Yeah. And one thing about Richie Grant, too, I think he took to heart in a positive way when Dean Pease basically called him out and said he had another playbook. And he does not know what's going on. And he took that to heart, came back that second year, and you could tell that he'd studied up. And even now, you're just seeing more and more of, wow, Richie Grant is looking like a leader. He's looking like a guy who the game has slowed down exponentially for. And that's just going to be really good stuff for the Falcons, right? But you guys, let us know what your thoughts are because, hey, we think that Richie Grant is about to ball out this season. But what do you guys think? Let us know by dropping us a comment like you always do in the chat when you check us out on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to download ATL Day Ones wherever you get your podcasts.